Welcome. In this part 2 video, we are going to set up Intune now to work with on-premises Active Directory that we have created in part 1, which is a 40 minutes long video. Now, for our members who are taking this course, you already know now how to use Intune or what is the features and how to deploy things directly when machines are connected to Intune. In this video, we are trying to focus more on the companies that are using on-premises Active Directory and how we are going to manage it if they're using Active Directory. But at this point, if you have went through all of these videos, you know how to manage applications, devices, enrolling devices directly. But after doing the 40 minutes long video, you know now that there are other ways people are using Intunes as well, and that is on-premises setup, hybrid setup, and that is what we are going to do in this video now to configure Intune with a hybrid setup. Now, before we jump into the lab, this is something you have already understood from the beginning of this course. But I'm just going to remind you again that when you start Intune, it has to start with the access first, because you just can't do anything without having a proper access. So first, find out in your company what type of licenses do they have, and do they have Intune. If somebody give you this project, do they have the Intune licenses? So that's something you need to find out, and find out from either the beginning of this course and do a research, because there are so many different licenses. In this case, you see in my Azure Active Directory, I see I'm using Azure AD Premium 2, but you could be using something different. But if you come over here to Mobility and MDM, we also have to enable applications. So if you don't see anything here, you need to click on Add Application and click on Intune, and then it will show up. And of course the Intune enrollment as well. So I'm gonna click on Microsoft Intune, and you see how it's set up to all. And if in your company it's some, then you should ask them why it's some, and then that should give you the reason. But I have all set up and then none for MAM. So if you come over here, and for enrollment, it's set to all as well. So that's the first thing that you just need to make sure that that is there. And then the second thing is by going to the user that you're going to be using in this lab environment, or anywhere, to make sure that that user have the rights. So if I click on the user, I'm going to be using this user because this is a domain admin, got migrated to this by using AD Sync services. In the first video we did this. So if I click on here and click on licenses, you see it has a license, Enterprise Mobility plus Security E5. If you don't see it, you can click on Assignment, and you need to make sure that you give it the license. So in this one, I just want to give it Enterprise Mobility plus E5, and making sure that Intune Plan 1 is selected here. And the rest of the stuff you can add it too, but it's up to you. Like I said, you may have different things, and that's where you need to do your research on licenses before you start this whole process. The final thing that I would check is going to the Intune settings. So let's go back to the portal, and we're going to open Intune device. So I'm in Office 365 portal.office.com. You can type that as well. And here, if you scroll all the way, Endpoint Manager. And here, if you come to the devices, enrollment devices, and click on automatic enrollment, you will see it set to all, and that's also just confirming that. So that's going to be all for the basic setup. But if you have something special going on in your company, make sure to go and ask them why we have selected some, and is there anything special that I need to know to make sure that the access works, or when I configure the Intune, is there something that is customized done in our scenario. So you need to know that, because you can't just go to a company and think that everything will be like this default way, or people might not have played around with this. They might have created a group. Inside the group, they may have added a lot of some other stuff, or maybe they may have added the devices, and they may have added a conditional access here. So that could cause issues for you. You probably wouldn't know this stuff, right? So this is why I would like you to take some time in the company, especially when you work, But if you're doing this from scratch in a lab environment, then you're free to just jump in and move around and practice a lot of these different things to make sure the access part is covered. So once this is covered, then you move on with the lab setup and the things that we're going to do in this lab. So let's move on to that. All right, so now we have a real scenario where we have a domain controller sync a server that has the AD Connect on. And now we have a staff machine, which I have already joined to the domain. So if you feel like, how did I get Windows 11? How did I join it? Remember my first video, I did all of that from scratch, and I have shown where in the lab you could have issues like adding a DNS inside this machine. The DNS address should be the IP of the DC1 in my case. And of course, then I have to uncheck IPv6 to make sure that my machine gets connected. So you may not come across these issues, but make sure to watch my lab video, which is the video is in the description of these units or these videos. That should be there. So I'm not going to cover how to create a Windows 11 again. At this point, you should definitely know how to do this. So in this case right now, we have to do certain things to make sure that our environment is ready for syncing everything correctly. So the first thing what we need to do is we need to go back to our Office 365 domain settings, and in here the domain, you see if we look in here, our default and domain is basically this one. What this is going to do is most likely most of the time when we basically want something inside the company the emails that are going to be used or the DNS that's going to be used, it may come across some issues when it's using a domain that is given to you by default. So what we need to do here, we need to change this to set as default here. So we're going to go ahead and click on default. You see this will replace your current default domain. When you add new users, their email addresses and usernames will use this domain. If a user has multiple email addresses, the default domain is used as that. So we're going to go ahead and just change that to default. That's the first step that I just did. Now, some companies may have a different approach. It's really up to how they have set up things and what they have running. So make sure that you don't change this in the company. You have to ask how are they using this, so that they will give you more information. Now, if you want to verify your domain, you can come to Azure Active Directory here and then scroll down and click on custom domain names, and you see our custom domain B2B service is verified and is checked as a primary. So now let's go back to our setup and let's start this machine. So the first thing we need to do is we need to go into our domain controller and create some policies, because we want our machines now, when it gets added, it should be automatically syncing in with our Azure Active Directory devices, which is going to become Intra ID, and then you're going to see a Intune connection, and that's going to be automatically done. So if we want to check this now, you can go back to Azure Active Directory or Intra. So here you're going to click on devices, and here all devices, and you see we don't have any devices coming from our domain environment at this point. So even though we did set up a synchronization, so this is something I'm going to show you where you need to fix this or make sure that your devices are getting synced at this point. So you won't see it because that sync that you have set up, probably we have missed the device setup over there. So let's go and fix everything, and let's see if everything is going to work correctly. So I'm back in my domain controller, so I'm going to go ahead and basically go into my domain controller and log in. So I'm logged in into DC1 right now, so we're going to go ahead and open group policy or Active Directory first. Just to show you an Active Directory, I created a OU. I just want to show you why you need this, and that's just a lot of people will be using it this way.
So you're going to open Active Directory users and computers. In your AD, you see that you will see computers under computers container. Now that's good and well, but most of the people will not use container for managing their computers. Usually they use OU because putting a group policy in containers is something that I usually don't see, and that's also it will not work in most cases. So what people do is they will create like a OU. So basically you right click here and you create a OU, like you right click, go to new and organizational unit, and that's where you will see desktop, staff, whatever they have created. So right now you see we have a computer called on-prem staff. That's this one right here, staff. So I'll call it on-prem because when we sync it, we will know, okay, this is coming from the local setup. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move this machine to the desktop, and I'm going to leave the AD sync in this one container, because what we will do, we will not sync this server, or you don't sync a domain controller in Intune, which I don't know if people are doing it that they may have a reason for it. So let's just see how we are going to do this now. So before syncing, we need to create a group policy. So group policy is something that we use for management. And of course, at this point, if you don't know about group policy, this means you're lacking that fundamental knowledge, which I explained in the beginning of this whole video, that if you don't know about Active Directory group policy, you have to take our fundamental IT support courses that teaches you the basics of this, and then there are server administration courses that teaches you how to handle all of this stuff. This is most of a systems administrator job. So if you are struggling with this, that means you lack this knowledge. So let's see. The first thing what we need to do is we have a desktop OU over here. We're going to right click here and create a new GPO. Basically, we're going to call it Intune. For AD, we're just going to call it for AD, just like that, or you can call it whatever you want. So just OK. And once we click OK, you see that the group policy is coming under the desktop. So this policy is being applied to any machines that are currently under the desktop. So that's where we're not going to touch any other OUs or computer containers, whatever that is. So we're going to right click here and edit. That's how you added a group policy. So in this, we will go into policies. You see that there's this administrative template. If you don't see what I'm showing you, this means your machine may not have gotten the administrative template when you have downloaded it, or it's old. You have to go to Google and type how do you get administrative template or update it. So this will show you a lot of that stuff. But in most new systems, you will see it. What we're going to do here, we're going to click on Windows Components, and here the first thing we need to do is to come down and click on Device Registration. So if you move your device registration, you see it's not configured. We're going to double click on it and enable it. This basically register the devices with Azure AD, and then we are also going to configure a MDM, which is going to be used for connecting our Azure connected clients to Intune. So there's two steps to it. I'm going to show you that. So we're going to enable this, and you will use user credentials. So whichever user logs in, we're basically saying that that user should be able to connect, because we have put all in there. So or once you change the groups later on, you can also use the user credentials. So we'll not use a device, we'll use user. And we'll click apply and OK. So this is how you configure a group policy. So what happens now when a computer is restarted, or you run a command gp update /force, it is going to implement this policy. Okay, but before doing that, we need to go back here in AD Sync and now make sure that our synchronization is correctly working or configured. So let's go and log into this server, and let's open the synchronization tool by right-clicking or going to, actually not the tool, we need to actually go into the Azure AD first by double-clicking here, because that's what we set up. So we of course It depends on how you set it up. So the devices may have already configured, but if you double click on the same icon on the desktop right here, that's going to take you to the synchronization scheduler. So here we're going to click on configure, and you see we need to make sure that we come here to configure device option. So when you click on it, click on next, and then here you get all that explanation. So we're going to click next here, and this is where you need to put the username and password of your Office 365 global administrator. Now once you put that, you see configure hybrid Azure AD join. We're going to go ahead and click on that first option, and Windows 10 and later we're going to click next here. You see how it's going to go out and it's going to pick this B2P service.com forest. We're going to go ahead and click that, and we are going to click Azure Active Directory. And then you see how optionally it says if you don't want to don't have enterprise admin credentials for the forest, download this PowerShell and configure the SCP offline. I'm gonna go ahead and download this just in case I need it. So you see how it's giving you all that information. So this is just like a PowerShell script that if you want to do it this way, you can use this. So you can actually download that. And here, if you have it, which we do, we basically click on add, and it's going to give you a username and password. We need to use that account that we have created early in part 1. We did make it an enterprise admin, so we should be good. So right now you see everything goes through, and we're going to click next here and finish this. Then we're going to click on configure here. So registration is completed now. So our device registration is completed. So if we go back to the synchronization by start and open a synchronization service, the next step we need to do is to make sure that we connect or select the right synchronization groups or containers or OUs in this. So what we need to do is we need to click on connect here, and we need to come over here and here where we need to go right click, go to properties on the domain, and then here you need to click on configure directory partition, and now we're going to click on containers. That's where we need to get that container. So here we need to use the enterprise admin or domain admin account and give it a password and click OK. Let's go ahead and do that. So once we do this, you see how things are going to come up. So in your case, you definitely want to keep the users in the lab environment. We're going to uncheck the domain controller, all of this other stuff like this one. Desktops we want to keep, computers we don't want to keep. So because we don't want this one to be synced, right? That's the server. And we want it to be this one to be synced, or anything under the desktop needs to be synced over. So we're going to click OK. And again, if you feel like in your company some things you're adding a machine but it's not getting synced over, one is your device is configured with the SCP setting that we just did. Second, if that is done, then is it really checked over here? Because maybe someone came in here and before you and they did all this stuff and unchecked it, and now you're trying to add a machine but it's never getting added. So that's because of this reason. So we're going to click OK, select OK to that, and then what we're going to do is just run a sync on this server, and you already know how to get this from the first video. So run a PowerShell, and let's run a force sync. It's going to say success, and if you go back here and refresh, so after a minute or two you see that our on-prem staff just showed up and with a hybrid Azure AD join. And now you see that there is this thing called pending. Now that's okay because you need to let it run for a few minutes, and of course if it takes very long, then you need to start troubleshooting off by clicking here and then going to the details of this and learn more scenarios and things like that, because it could be missing some links and stuff like that. So of course that leads you to troubleshooting, and that's where it leads you to do the documentation approach. There could be many reasons for why your systems are not moving off of pending So in this case, we need to just wait now and make sure our machine moves off of the pending, and then it should automatically join itself to the Intune. But if it's not, that's a second step. So the first is to make sure that your machine gets on Azure Active Directory or Intra devices. Okay, that's the first step. If you have issues there, then there's some issue going on with either your registration, either your syncing problem, things like that. If it's done and you see the date and everything, pending thing is gone, and this is showing none, then that's the second part. That's where the Intune is having registration issue. That could be your account that you're logging in. Does it really go through all the way for it to register it to Intune? And that's where you need to make sure that your Intune licenses and everything is working on the user end. But when we get to that point, that's where we're going to talk about it. For now, we just want to make sure that it goes away from pending. So the first step needs to be done so we can troubleshoot. So the next step, we're going to go ahead and log into this machine with our domain account, because that's the whole part of this, right? You want people to be logging in with their normal domain accounts, and then automatically it will start getting added to Azure and all that stuff. So once you log in, you see that's where the policies will start kicking in. Another tip would be to restart this machine to make sure the policies start getting implemented that we have just added. So that could be another reason you may not be getting some sort of response, because sync could have been done from the Active Directory, but the computer still needs to connect back to your Azure environment and do its job. So once you restart the machine, you can go back and check, you see how that went away, the pending went away. You know what this tells us basically? This tells us that our machine first step of getting into Azure have successfully did the job, right? The second step is right now is to put it on Intune, which is none right here. But we have been successfully added this machine. So right now, if you want to test this, you can test it or check it. One of the commands that you should definitely know or learn more about now is called dsregcmd/status. So once you do this, it's going to give you a lot of information. So if you scroll up, you see it says domain join. That tells you that this machine is on Azure Active Directory. And then the rest of the information will get populated with time. You still have to give it some time for it to start looking for things. But this is my tip to you now. The first thing you should do now after this, when you want to learn this, you should go to Google and type dsregcmd troubleshooting. This is going to teach you what this means, what this means, what this means. Every single thing will go into detail. So that will be up to you how much time you want to spend on this one tool, dsregcmd, which basically they've created for everything inside what's happening in here. That's probably one of your best tools right here to understand or issues. So if there's some sort of error, like authentication error, some sort of there could be a time error because your machine may not be getting synced with the domain controller or some other weird issue. They have tons of different things that can happen right now. And that is what you have to, as an engineer, need to be comfortable going to the documentation and learning about dsregcmd. No videos can teach you this stuff. You gotta go in there, learn this, come over here, and then understand before the machine that was getting joined to Intune, copy that, and then after when the machine is added to the Intune, then compare it, what's the differences between these two, and then learn all of this. So for example, if I come down, you see how there's no tenant name, there's no MDM URL. So this means at this point, if we don't get these URLs, we're not going to be able to add this machine on Intune. So then we'll need to fix it, but we'll have to wait for it to do its job first. I'm going to restart this machine one more time and see if it's going to get added. But one of the things you can check right now, just to quickly check, by going to settings and going to accounts, we should be getting an automatically getting an account getting added here. So you see how it says B2P and there's no info on top of this. This means this machine is still not added to Intune at this point. So we need to restart this machine and then wait for the policies to get implemented. And sometimes you just have to wait a little bit because things are happening in the background. You don't want to shut it down. So give it 5 minutes and then restart it. And then after that, you should start your troubleshooting process. All right, so after restarting the machine, you can check it two ways. So you go to System again, and of course you need to give it some time too after restarting the machine, because again the group policy is getting implemented. And you can come to Accounts, go to the account right here, and you see when you click here, there's the info. That tell us that this is on MDM now. If you want to verify the second way, of course, you go back to the website and refresh, and you see that when you refresh it, it's under Microsoft Intune. And of course, I can check it under the Intune devices by clicking all devices, and you see that well, it's going to show up here because probably it's going to take some time for it to come up here because it is on under Intune, right? Yeah, you see when I refreshed it, it showed up right here on Prem Staff Intune. So now this machine is manageable under Intune. Now this is something that you have been learning in the course. Like if you go back to the course, on the first modules teaches you what this is about: hardware deployments, app deployments, everything inside Intune. You've been learning that inside the course. But so far you have successfully put an on-premises machine that somebody's using with the Active Directory login, and then you converted that machine into Intune managed machine. You see, you can retire it, wipe it, delete it, do a lot of these things the same way you have been doing it directly inside when you did this in the course. So this is where you need to really work on. If there's issues, you got to make sure that the things are set up correctly in the beginning, what we have done. So for Intune, of course, you need to make sure that the device enrollment is correct. So for example, you click on enroll devices inside Intune and click on automatic enrollment, making sure that it's set to all, MAM set to none. All depends on your company's setting, by the way, this one, but I set it to none, and here's the all. So that's the setting that is being implemented right now. Then making sure that the user that's running the account, so for example, this is the one that we just added, that machine, that's a local account. Does this user have the license? If you go back to the licenses here, you see how I have only one license, in Enterprise Mobility plus Security E5. There's no other licenses for that user, but it still worked. So that is the main things are right here. Then you have to also check in your company, do they have MFA or some other security groups or something like that that they have implemented, or conditional access that you need to check. But of course, if you have built the lab, that's not going to be your concern at this point. And what you need to do here, let's say if there's an issue of you getting that machine to on the MDM, you first need to then create a brand new machine. Don't add it through the group policy. Make sure that you don't implement a group policy on that machine, and then just click on connect on the bottom here. Go to accounts, go to the bottom here, and then click on connect and use the account that you're using to connect that to MDM. If that goes through smoothly, then I think there's no issues with account, because you may even get a prompt here that you got some kind of code or something like that. So who knows, you may have something implemented. If that's still not working, then download the company portal app go to Google and type Microsoft Company Portal app, and once you download that app, turn it on and then try to connect it through that. Sometimes that app gives you more information than you connecting here. It just gives you like your DNS may be having an issue, or you need to type something in there, right? It gives you more information. So now the master tip over here is, of course, you need to go back to the CMD dsrex cmd/status and go to Google and type dsrex cmd troubleshooting. That is what's going to teach you a lot on how to handle some of this. And another thing you can do is probably just how you added this machine, you can also type a command in the dsreg and leave command. So there's a command where you can type dsrexcmd/leave, and that will basically unjoin this from this system. We can click on disconnect here too, but usually if the machine is having an issue, you probably have to remove it, do the leave first, then do the disconnect. If it doesn't disconnect, then come over here and delete it from all of the Azure Intune, and then try to re-add it again and see if that works. If that still fails, then go to Google, type, having an issues or issues with joining a machine to MDM. You're going to find a bunch of PowerShell. People have done this before you many years, so I'm sure you're going to find something, but those are probably not supported by Microsoft, but those are solutions. You have to then go and fix it somehow, right? And that's how you need to manage your Intune. Now the next thing is just a simple thing. Go back to your course, and inside here, module 1 task, learn all about Intune enrollments, managing deployments of updates, and all that is just, now you have a direct connection. You just need to learn about Intune at this point. That's you're just getting more into Intune, and we will continue to develop more on top of these videos, on-premises videos here, and see what we can do, like wiping a machine and scenarios or things like that, to make it more interesting.